All right, guys, welcome to the show today. And here's what we're talking about today. If and I'm going to sort of personalize it and then you guys can do what you will with it. But if I right now didn't own a home, but I'm like in that pool of people where I'm going, yeah, I could, like I'm right there, I'm about ready to buy a place. I'm just trying to figure out exactly when to do it. If I was in that boat right now, what would I do based on the information presented in relation to interest rates? Okay. As we jump into it, if you guys find that you do need real estate help at some point, 1911syndicate.com. That would be where you would go to get real estate help. You can message us through that. We work all over the country, not just in Utah where I live. We do work with a lot of military, law enforcement, and cool people, but that's not our entire clientele. A good chunk of it, though. So here's the deal, guys. There seems to be a pretty universal opinion inside of the mortgage world right now that interest rates are going to come down roughly third quarter. Now, there's a skeptical part of me that says, I watched the news, which again is tough to believe, but I watched the news and I go, I'm not seeing the indication of like the economy's about to just they're still talking about trying to create a soft landing, so I'm not really sure where this turn in interest rates getting better is coming from. But the mortgage world seems almost unified in this notion of, hey, in a few months, they are going to come back down to, for sure, the fives, who knows, maybe even the high fours, which would be great at that point. Truthfully, it is a good interest rate. It's just not 3%, which was, the case for a couple of years there. So if I was in a pool of people who I don't own a home but I'm thinking about it, right? And I'm qualified and I'm armed with that information that rates may come back down, what would I do? Because there's really two options, right? So option A is the following: buy now, refinance later. Okay, here's the pros and the cons of that. I make notes for myself because I can't remember anything. The pros is that you're probably going to get a home right now a little cheaper than you would have a year ago or 2 years ago. Okay, so you're probably going to get a little better deal in terms of the overall purchase price of the home. The other pro is you're probably not going to have to deal with the crazy competitive nature that we were dealing with 1 and 2 years ago, because the buyer pool is simply significantly smaller right now. Okay, and I think that really the competitive nature for a first-time buyer was the biggest problem that they were running into 1 and 2 years ago. What are the cons of buying now, refinancing later? Well, the con would be there's not a lot of inventory right now. So in terms of overall spread of how many homes can we look at and then make an offer on, it is a shrunken down pool compared to, again, 1 or 2 years ago. The other con is that you're going to have to ride out basically a shitty interest rate until the rates come back down to a point where it makes sense to refinance. Okay, so really that's going to be you looking at sort of your monthly cash flow and finance to go, hey, can I deal with that extra, let's just say it's an extra $400 a month that I'm going to be paying on my mortgage payment for the next, I'm saying maybe up to 2 years, right? Like get dramatic with it. Maybe for the next 2 years, can you swing that extra few $100 a month? Or is it like, hey, we are eating ramen until the rates come back down? That is a question I don't have the answer for. That's something that you have to answer personally, with your family and all that kind of stuff. Option B is to hold off for now, wait for rates to drop, and then buy something. As with option A, there's pros and cons to this. Okay, so the pro is you would have a better interest rate if you wait now, buy later. Okay, that will lead to a lower monthly payment with one little caveat, okay? Another pro, you are going to wind up with a higher pre-approval amount. As rates come up or down, assuming your income has stayed the same, your pre-approval amount is going to change with the interest rates, because it's going to change what your buying power is because of debt to income ratios, all this kind of stuff. Really, what you need to know is, hey, when the rates come back down because the money is cheaper to borrow, you're actually going to be able to purchase more home on the purchase price, okay? The other pro is you're probably going to have more inventory if you wait for the rates to drop, because once the rates drop, most of the people who've been thinking about selling are going to go, let's go ahead and do it. There's going to be new buyers in the pool, right? Potentially this guy. So let's list our house. So you're going to have more houses to choose from. The cons of this plan: you're going to have to deal with a more competitive landscape, much like you, hopefully not as crazy as it was, 1 and 2, 3 years ago, but it is going to be more competitive. The problem with it being competitive is the competitive landscape favors people who are buying another home, right? Like they're selling their first home that they bought and now they're buying that second house, because the advantage they have is equity in that home. They're selling their first home, they walk away with whatever, 100 grand. So because they've got this $100,000 pool of equity on top of maybe anything else that they've saved to put towards a down payment, if they needed to pay 20 grand over the listing price, they're going, well, sucks, but hey, we've got the funds because of the equity in our home. When you're a first-time buyer, really you are relying on what have we saved up. I mean, we've pinched our pennies and maybe even invested, and maybe we're cashing out certain investment accounts, things like that. And that's what we've got. We don't have the benefit of selling this asset known as our home in order to go buy the next home. So really you have to look and go, well, how competitive would we be in that situation if we were having to pay 20 grand over what a house is listed at? Are you in a position to do that? Yes or no, right? Again, that's going to depend on you. You're probably, one other con, you're probably going to wind up paying a little bit more for the house. One, because the prices will likely come back up a little bit. Hopefully not crazy. I'm not trying to have them like do what they were doing before, to be honest with you, but they're probably going to come up a little. Whether that's organically, just because the prices come up, or because we're dealing with multiple offers again, and now we're back in that situation of, do you have the cash to play the 20 grand over asking price game? So a question you're going to have to really entertain is, hey, does the potential increase in what you're going to pay for the home offset the reduction in your interest rate? Because you're playing this game of balancing out the scales. Right now you go, hey, it's more expensive to borrow the money, but I can get the house for a little bit cheaper without having to compete with a bunch of people. That's appealing. Versus, well, the money's cheaper to borrow, so that's nice, but I got to compete with more people and higher purchase prices. You see what I'm saying? Like, this is the game. So if I were in that position right now, didn't own a home, I'm qualified, I'm just figuring out when I'm going to do it, personally, I would go ahead and do it. I would rather have the less competitive landscape and go ahead and buy something now when the house is a little bit cheaper, ride out the interest rate for a year or whatever, and then refinance it once it gets down to like, maybe 4% or something like that. That's what I would do, right? But hey, you're not me, I'm not you, so that's entirely up to you. But this is food for thought, things that you should consider. If you guys have any real estate questions, drop them down in the comments. It's great. It gives me stuff to talk about. I actually prefer answering your questions versus just coming up with the random things to talk about. And you are welcome to subscribe to the channel and hit the little thumbs up on the video, all that kind of stuff. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.